Hello, and welcome to Veronica's Voice, the podcast for cycle breakers and legacy makers, where we keep it real, raw, and authentic. Today, we're going to talk about busyness, and this is something that AJ and I talk about a fair bit. And I'm going to share with you how this episode came about because I think it's pretty funny. So, AJ and I we were friends as well as colleagues, and we were exchanging messages. And she had said something in her message about feeling like she hadn't had a productive enough day after listing off all the stuff that she had done that day. And I had responded with, it sounds like you were very productive. And let me tell you what I did today. And I shared my day, which had been much less productive in terms of how we normally talk about productiveness. I had done some yummy things for myself, like taking a nap and walking my dog, and I forget what the other thing was. And I was sharing it sort of from the standpoint of like, I was actually feeling a little guilty for not having been more productive. And AJ, you responded with AJ responded to that message to me that she was jealous of my day and that she wanted her days to be like that. And I thought it was interesting because I was feeling guilty for not being more productive. And so we got into this conversation about busyness and how busyness is a badge of honor and how we don't subscribe to that philosophy. So here on Dragon Song, we talk about disrupting the system through authenticity. So today we're disrupting the system of busyness because it is so prevalent everywhere. And in fact, AJ, you and I were talking about how we're even changing our language, where when people are like, oh, how are you? Or what have you been up to? And the response is, oh, I've been busy.
I'm so busy. Yeah.
So busy. And then person A is like, oh yeah, I get it. And there's that like sympathy and commiserating. And it's like, do you want to share a little bit about that? Because you were talking about how you experienced that.
Yeah. In a lot of the years of work that I did, I think anytime there was a social event or a gathering or anything like that, it was always, hey, how's it going? How are you? And I remember my response was always just, oh, I'm so busy. And I don't think I knew how to respond a different way, because at least me saying, oh, I'm so busy would immediately lead into another conversation. Like it would immediately lead into what I'm doing at work or what I'm seeing at work or what's happening. Whereas what's great about if somebody says, oh, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm good. How are you? Right? Like it didn't have the same like flow to it, I felt like. And there was a lot of, for me personally anyway, there was quite a bit of, like my busyness was kind of wrapped up in my, like invalidation that I was doing something important.
Yes.
That I was somebody important and the work that I did was important. And if I wasn't busy, then what exactly was I doing with my life?
I'm not important. Yeah. And I remember when I was working, yeah, it is interesting, right? We're important if we're important if we're busy. And I remember when I was working in corporate and I was living in a small town where there was more stay-at-home moms than maybe in some other places. So a lot of my kids' friends, parents, the moms were stay-at-home moms. And so whenever I encountered them, I remember there was always this awkwardness. And some of them actually verbalized this to me, and some of them I could just see it, where they felt a little uncomfortable because they knew that I had this like corporate full-time job. And they were like, oh, well, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. And they kind of felt embarrassed, And I remember at the time, like, I wish I could be a stay-at-home mom, like I really valued their role in their family, but they felt bad that they weren't, didn't have some full-time corporate job. And now, so if you have followed along, those of you listening, if you have followed along to the Phoenix Burning or any of the other Dragon Song episodes, you may know that I've committed myself to like 6 months of rest and restoration. And so my life right now is like extraordinarily slow, almost to the point of it, like, it's a little unnerving even to me. But so when AJ and I were talking, I was reflecting back on sort of how my life has changed over the years. And AJ, you offered, or I think I asked you if you'd be willing to kind of have this dialogue with me about,
Mm-hmm.
because you were curious about how I kind of came to this lifestyle that I have now. And we wanted to share with people things that you can do. So one of the things we want you to get out of this conversation today is things that you can do in your life right now, no matter where you are in your state, in your phase of life. So AJ and I are both, business owners. And for me, that's my full-time source of, it's my full source of income and my kind of full-time where I put all my effort. And then, but even when I was in corporate full time, and then I had the transition where I was in corporate and starting my business. And I kind of had different things that I did along the way that slowly allowed me to kind of unfold into this life now of really ease. And I call it luxury. And I'm not talking about financial luxury, but like luxury of just like enjoying my life. So I want you, those of you listening, to walk away with things that you can actually do no matter where you are in your journey of busyness, to start slowing down and actually like enjoying your life, like living your life now instead of waiting until you're retired or whenever to live your life. That's the system, right, AJ? Of like, we are taught that we're supposed to just work to death.
Yes.
Interesting expression, right? Work yourself to death. Work as hard as you can until you retire.
Yes.
And then enjoy your life for whatever health and years you have left on this planet after you retire. To me,
well, and I think that's something that we're taught from when we're really, really young, right? It's like your life is ruled by the clock. And it's not, it's some jobs still have you clocking in and clocking out. And it's like you live your life around that.
Yes.
Right? Like the things that you're truly passionate about and the things that you truly want to spend your time on, like spending time with your family or walking your dog, or like you have to build the rest of your life right now in the framework that we're living in. You build the rest of your life and the things that you are truly passionate about and the things that you want to actually spend time on outside of and around your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like
yeah. I think that was something you commented on once in one of our conversations, that the way that I structure my life now. So now as a business owner and having the freedom, the luxury and my luxurious life, the luxury to schedule my time without feeling like I have to abide by somebody else's rules. Maybe we'll touch on that, the feeling like you have to. So what I've started doing is I schedule on a daily basis. I schedule the things that are important to me. So, well, I have to walk my dog. I guess I don't have to, but I walk my dog usually twice a day. I meditate pretty much every day, sometimes multiple times a day. I journal. I spend time with my son who's living with me right now. I like to be out in nature. I have sort of a wind down schedule in the evening. And so I started scheduling those things in my life first. And then my client sessions. So when I have blocks of time in my calendar when I see clients, that's when I see clients and I'm available. And I know a lot of business owners will do the opposite. They're like, well, my clients are available at these times. And so I'm going to make myself available. And then I'm going to try to fit in my workout and my cooking meals and my spending time with kids around that. So yeah, doing it the other way around is what I do now.
So, well, I guess for those of us that want to get there, was it a conscious choice for you to start making these shifts subtly? Or was it more of something that just kind of started happening? And like, how did you get to a place where you are now okay with, and by okay with, I mean, probably from a mindset perspective, right? Because there is so much of that busyness stuff out there. And there is so much of that. If you're not busy, then what really are you doing? How did you get to a place where that doesn't bother you anymore?
That is such a good question, and there's like so many different layers to that. So I'll see if I can remember them all and get through it. I could probably talk about this for like the next half hour, so feel free to jump in with questions. So I think you asked me, is it a conscious decision, and how did I get to a mindset where I'm okay with it? So first, I will say that the mindset part is super interesting to me, because even now, I mean, we just had this Voxer exchange recently where I still felt guilty for not doing more. So the mindset is it's a constant work in progress. There's like more layers to release of feeling guilt or feeling not okay about it. But I'll talk a little bit more about the mindset part maybe in a moment. Was it a conscious decision? Yes and no. So now looking back, I can see that when I first started having a life that wasn't caving to the demands of everyone around me, it wasn't actually a conscious choice that I remember of being like, I want a slower life. I want a life of ease and luxury. Like that wasn't what was on my mind. But there were other things that were sort of pulling me to start setting boundaries for myself. So I'll share what some of those are in a moment. As far as sort of the life I have now and so now it's very conscious, because what happens is when you start doing it, when you start limiting people's access to you, basically, or setting boundaries, however you want to look at it, I found at least that there was always positive results. And so it's very motivating to keep doing it. And so then as you do it, then you become more intentional and more conscious about it. And so now it is very conscious decisions to schedule myself first. I will say that when I started my own business, it was the second business coach that I had who told me that she schedules her vacations. She schedules her business around her vacations. So she likes to take, I can't remember if it's hers or mine. I think she likes to take the whole month of December and the whole month of July off. And so she scheduled her clients so that she wasn't working in the month of July. And I remember when she told me that, I was like, you can do that? You can just take off a whole month? Like, what? And so now, so it was learning from others, so part of it was conscious, but a big part of it was learning from others. My first business coach was the one who shared that she sets her schedule for when she sees clients. And it was like the middle of the day. And I'm like, how do you see clients in the middle of the day? And yet I was working full-time in corporate at the time when I hired her. I hired her because I was wanting to transition out of corporate into my own business. And I somehow found the time to meet with her in the middle of the day because that's when she was open and it was important to me.
Interesting.
So she was, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's such a shift from, because you were in corporate, I was a not-for-profit, and even like the process through which you ask for vacation is very different then, right? First of all, is it okay at a time that, the company can tolerate you being gone? Number two, are other people in line to take this time first? And number three, yes, if all those play out, then you can take your time, right? It's a very different, it's almost backwards.
It's backwards. You can take your time. And on top of all that, I remember taking vacations and my boss calling me and I was expected to answer. And I remember near the end, sort of where I was sort of leaving my job and I was already moving into this mindset of not being hyper responsive in that way, trying to, or saying that I wasn't going to respond to her phone call, but then just feeling that pressure, And I remember it was like 5:00 on a Friday and I was on vacation and I'm like, is this really so urgent that we have to talk? Like, aren't you leaving for your weekend? It's 5:00 on a Friday. I remember they scheduled me to be on a conference call while I was on vacation. And I felt like I had to be there because if I wasn't, it would affect, my job growth and my blah, 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 all the things, right?
Or it projects on you as being maybe not the best employee.
That's right.
Right? Because you're not just dedicating all of your time, both at work and your time where you're not at work, prioritizing your work.
Exactly.
Your job.
Yeah. And so there, that is something that I hear from clients too, that are kind of working through this and navigating this, is that they feel like they're not going to get the bonuses or they're not going to get the promotions or what have you. And that might be true. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not going to happen because that's the mentality of a lot of corporations and or other types of businesses. And it just comes down to like, what kind of life do you want to lead?
Yeah.
So you and I were talking about this a minute ago, but before we came on, I was actually having a conversation with my son last night about how I feel like right now I am living this luxurious life. Did I say this already? I can't remember if I said this already while we were recording. Not so much in terms of finances or material things, but just in terms of the ease and relaxation and enjoyment that I have in my day. And I wouldn't trade this for anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would say like the flexibility and like just the ability that you have to follow through on the things that you want to do. Like, I want to go take a walk, so I'm going to go take a walk. It's not regimented and it's not, I guess that's what it is. It's not overscheduled because everything else seems so overscheduled that if it's put in your calendar and you have time to do it, great. If not, then.
Yeah, exactly. So things that, so now I schedule my vacations, or what I don't even think of them as vacations, but times that I want to be completely, and I say that because I feel like I don't have a life I need to take a vacation from anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's times that I want to go do something, I want to spend time with my kids, or I want to travel or whatever. So that's my vacation.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy my life, most of the time as it is. So, but I schedule those in my calendar ahead of time so that I know that I'm not going to get booked with sessions or whatever when I'm supposed to be off. Which is still like when I sit down and do my calendar, and it still kind of blows me away a little bit. And then also, so that's sort of in the big picture. And then also in the small picture is scheduling each day. So like if you're someone, so if you're listening and you're like, okay, great, giddy for you, Veronica, you're your own boss and you can schedule your day however you want. That's just not possible for me. Mm-hmm. The question is just like, what is possible? Like I remember, so honestly, AJ, as I'm sharing this with you right now, I'm realizing that so many of these things that I've started implementing came from coaches of different types of coaches. So, sometimes we need that external support to really make these decisions and have these realizations. But I was working with a fitness coach actually. And she kind of said a similar thing where she was like, put your workouts in your calendar and she was into meal prepping. So she was like, put your meal prep in your, like literally in your calendar, and then don't cancel it. And if you do cancel it, don't cancel it, reschedule it. Like if you had a client who was in or a business meeting or a doctor's appointment or whatever else is in your calendar, your kids have a play date, your kids have an extracurricular activity, pops up in your calendar, and for some reason you can't make it, are you just going to not show up? I mean, maybe some people do, but most people are probably going to call and be like, hey, I can't make it. Let's reschedule.
Yes.
So treat yourself the same way that you would treat any other appointment in your calendar. Yeah. Schedule those things that are important to you. If it's fitness or meal prepping, or if it's an hour of doing nothing, an hour of taking a bath, and whatever it is, put it in your calendar. And then if you need to, truly need to reschedule it, then reschedule it, but don't just ignore it and cancel it.
Yeah. And treat yourself, I guess, with the same level of consideration.
Yes.
As you would treat someone else, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really the bottom line of a lot of the work that I do, which is encouraging people to put yourself first.
Yes.
And that's really what this comes down to. So if you're not at a place where you feel like you're able to make these really big changes, you can make some of these smaller changes. And then like going back to like, if you're in corporate right now or some other, if you're in a job where you're answering to somebody else, so what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life? Like I just said a moment ago, I don't feel like I have to take a vacation because I enjoy my life the way it is. Right. So for me, when I was in corporate, I made a decision at one point or choice to no longer climb the ladder. I was like, and it was interesting because my whole time in corporate, I was climbing the ladder, and I climbed the ladder pretty quickly. I enjoy management. I enjoy all those things. And I was like, nope, I don't want to be promoted, because I know that if I'm promoted, their expectations are that I'm putting in more time. Yeah. Now, could I have been promoted and still not put in more time? Maybe. I don't know, because that's not what I chose. But I chose to stop moving up, just stay where I was. And then some of the things I did back then, which was really the beginning of all of this, moving into a life of less busyness, I stopped responding to my emails as though they were text messages and needed instant response. Did you experience this when you worked in a nonprofit?
I did. Yeah, I did. We were contracted to work, like our contracts actually said you only work a 37.5-hour work week, and it was salaried and all that. But I found myself working like 50-hour weeks, responding to text messages, responding to emails as though they were text messages at like 11 o'clock on a Friday night.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's all about like teaching people or showing people how you want to be treated. So emails coming in and people, respond to their emails right away and they're notified. Your phone's pinging at you when you get an email. I turned the notifications off on my phone and I started checking because what I discovered, because I was in a position of management, and what I discovered was that I was spending so much time responding to emails that I couldn't get any work done. So, and I know this is like a common, strategy that different time management coaches will share, which is check your email twice a day. Hopefully it doesn't take you 4 hours to respond to your email, but spend half an hour, whatever it is, and even an hour responding to your email. Then don't look at it and do whatever else you need to do. And people are like, oh, but people expect responses. Yep, they do. And they'll learn that you only respond every 4 hours and you don't respond after 5 p.m. and you don't respond on the weekends.
And I think to add to that, I think you have to get to a place. If that's what you're choosing to do, then you have to get to a place where you're okay with the judgment that comes with it. Because there will be judgment that comes with it, right?
There might be judgment, yeah.
Yeah. Like I think what we're talking about, like moving away from the busyness and moving away from these 9 to 5 scheduled jobs, and I guess living your life around your work. We're talking about it because that's something we value and something that we would like to move closer to. I mean, you're there, but I would like to move closer to it, right? So for those of you out there who, are in line with us, that makes sense. There's probably going to be a lot of people out there who want that 9 to 5, who want to climb that ladder, who want to do those things, right? So it's really about getting really clear on what it is that you value, and then being able to make the changes that come with that, along with accepting a lot of the other stuff that's going to come with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There is judgment, and I think the type of industry or career you're in is also going to be a factor. I have for some reason a lot of friends that are lawyers, and I've heard them talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of judgment around not being super responsive, and also I saw this post recently about hey, don't send emails at 9 o'clock at night. If you're working at 9 o'clock at night, you can schedule your email so it's delivered the next morning. And somebody responded, yes, but the point of sending an email at 9 o'clock at night is so everyone knows that you're working at 9 o'clock at night. It's like that badge of honor thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you're the timestamp is 8 a.m. in the morning, 8 a.m., then the people in the office are going to be like, why weren't you working late? Why aren't you working so hard? And that's the bottom line right there, AJ. Why weren't you working so hard? It's this idea. This is the bottom line for me, is this idea. I just got chills. This idea that you have to work hard in order to have the life that you want, in order to enjoy life. You have to earn it.
Yeah.
By working hard.
Yes.
It's not true.
And how many times, right? Like, how many times do we hear people say, I just need a vacation. I'm going to go recharge so I can come back to work fresh. I'm going to go recharge so I can come back fresh. Well, why are we working so hard to come back to work fresh? Like, why can't we show up for our lives fresh, right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly. I will say that, where I was working, it was a for-profit corporate America kind of job, but it was a very more like understanding place, and they were more into work-life balance than some other places. What I discovered though was when I started doing that is it was less about judgment, or maybe I just didn't care about the judgment. I don't remember. But I think it was more from a place of like jealousy. or envy of like, well, why do you get to not respond? Why, why do I have to work at 10 o'clock at night and you don't? Maybe that's judgment. I don't know. I saw it more as of jealousy, and I just didn't take that on because I was like, you're choosing to work at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm not choosing to work at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting my my client needs, my client requirements. So so you're absolutely right though, AJ, that is a big part of the mindset shift, is letting go of what other people think of you. And that's a big part of life in general. I mean, I think we spend so much of our time wrapped up in other people's opinions of us. But the thing is, it's your life. It's my life. And like, am I going to live my entire life based on the opinions of others?
No. Well, and see, that's something I try and remind myself of, because it's like you said, right? It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's a process. And you will find yourself, or I at least find myself, kind of falling into old patterns every now and then, even just thought patterns every now and then. Like we chatted a couple weeks ago, right? And I was like, I was not productive today. And I felt bad about not being productive when actually I really was relatively productive. And it's my own judgment against how productive I was, right? But for me, I really try and remind myself, like when I go to bed at night and when my head hits that pillow, like if today is my last day, am I okay with what happened all throughout the day today? And for me to not wake up tomorrow, because I mean, unfortunately, that's a possibility for, all of us out there. But am I okay with it? And more often than not, if I can say yes, then I'm okay with that, right? If I am not okay with that, then that, for me anyway, ends up being motivation to be a little bit more conscious of my choices the next day, right? And it's funny how I think what you value significantly changes over time, right? We chatted about this a little bit before we started recording, but like 10 years ago, I lived a very, very different life, and I was chasing very different things, right? I wanted to climb that ladder. I wasn't in corporate, I was in not-for-profit, but I still wanted to climb that ladder, and I wanted to be, managing my team, and I wanted to be like the director of our department, and I wanted to move up and move up and move up. And that was at the expense of, my daughter was in daycare 10 hours a day. That was at the expense of me being so busy, quote unquote, all the time that I wasn't able to make it to family engagements, or I wasn't able to make it on family trips and things like that. And now when I think back to that, I'm like, especially given that I, funding for my particular position in not-for-profit, because not-for-profit is based on funding, ended, and I didn't return to it. It's like my 10 years of working for that particular organization. And like I said, I was only contracted to work 37.5 hours. I was working 50 to 55 hours a week. What did that actually accomplish for me?
Yeah. What did that accomplish for you? That's like such a good question.
Yeah. And I struggle right now sometimes because I'm like, I try not to think about it too much, but I think about all that time that I lost with my kid during that time, right? And it's funny because she mentioned the other day, she's much older now, obviously, but she mentioned it and she was like, Mommy, would you want to go back to your old job? And I was like, no. I'm like, do you want me to go back to my old job? And she was like, no. I'm like, why do you say that? And she's like, Mommy, I never saw you. Like, I never saw you. So I was like, okay, well, Mommy's not going back to that old job. So, okay.
Yeah, I want to highlight for people listening the two things that you just said, because I thought they were so powerful. When you go to bed at night, you ask yourself, are you okay with what you did with your life that day?
Yeah. Are you okay with your day?
Are you okay with your day? Yeah. How do you feel about your day? And if you feel good about it, great. If you don't, then okay, maybe I need to make some different decisions tomorrow. Because let's not wait till we're like on our deathbed to be asking that question, right?
Yes.
Am I okay with, or like our kids' graduation, or, kids moving out of our house. Oh, am I okay with how I parented these past 18 years?
Right. Yeah.
Let's ask that question each day. I really like that. I'm gonna add that. And then something, and the second thing you just said just now, which was sort of similar, which now I'm totally blanking on. You said, what was that for? all of that work? What was it for?
Oh yeah.
Or what did it bring me?
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that um I see. I mean, I was there, and I saw a lot of. I started moving into this new mindset when I was still in corporate, and I was in a supervisory position, and I saw it in the people I supervised, which is that, like, I have to do this. If I don't do this, it's not going to get done. I I just promise you, for everyone listening who's experienced this, like, if you don't go into work tomorrow for whatever reason, I'm going to share this little piece of languaging. I used to say, if I get hit by a truck and don't come in tomorrow, decided I didn't want to speak that into the world anymore because I don't want to create that. A friend of mine actually commented that she switched to saying, if I win the lottery and don't come into work tomorrow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, right?
I like that. Okay.
So these just little ways of switching your thoughts. So if those of you listening, if you win the lottery and don't come into work tomorrow and you're in some high-powered job, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. It blew my mind how often I saw people go on maternity leave or leave for some reason or whatever. And life goes, like, the machine goes on.
Yep.
You're just not that important. I am just not that important in the role that whatever, even though I was in management and all the things.
And nobody, this might sound harsh, but I'm sure everyone's heard it at one point or another. Nobody's irreplaceable.
No one's irreplaceable. So sorry.
In corporate, right? Like in your work life, I would say nobody's irreplaceable in your work life. But think about the places where you are not replaceable, and how much time and energy and effort are we really putting into the things that it would actually make a significant impact if you were not here, right? Like, I'm thinking about children.
How much time and effort are you putting into the things that would make an impact if I'm not here? I want people listening to, like, really think about that. How much time and effort am I putting into the things that would really make an impact? And start scheduling those things. Or if you're not a scheduler, start prioritizing those things. You could ask yourself, where does my time and effort make the most impact?
Yes.
So in addition to the question of how do I feel about my day today, in the morning or before you go to bed, where is my time and effort going to make the most impact? And then freaking prioritize that for that day. And if the answer for you is at your job, great. Yes. I feel like I make a lot of impact in the work that I do, and it's very important to me and precious to me. So they might be in your work, and that's fantastic. But yeah, where can you put your time and effort to make the most impact?
Yeah. And I don't think it's always going to be, it's probably not, right? Because no behavioral shift is ever easy. So it's not going to be easy. And it's really trying to find that balance, right? Because we all need a paycheck. Most of us anyway, we all need a paycheck. We all need to put food on the table. We all need some sort of income coming in. So a lot of the time it's really making time to find that balance between where can I really prioritize the things that are important to me outside of my work, and how much time and effort do I still need to put into my work in order to facilitate all the other things, right? Because there is that balance, until we win the lottery one day, right?
There is a balance for sure. I will say though that it has surprised me over and over and over again how much less effort I can put into generating income than I thought I needed to. And that balance is continuing to just like keeps shifting and shifting.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to think about it, especially as you're getting started. And also for everyone listening to realize that you're like, well, if you ask yourself, how much effort do I need to put into generating an income? You might come back with 40, 60 hours a week. And I promise you that's not true. Continuing to move. So it's just starting the process and asking yourself, where can I start making these changes now? And notice what comes up for you in your mind, like the mindset you were asking about, is it guilt? Is it fear or anxiety around money? Is it, what? Yeah.
And really, like, try to find ways to facilitate it, right? Because it's not, for me anyway, it wasn't it wasn't necessarily easy. Like if I know that I have it scheduled in my calendar to work out in the morning and it's weeks during when I have my daughter, I'm waking up an hour and a half before I normally would to make sure I get my workout in, to make sure I'm, showered and ready before she wakes up. There are days where I try to wake up even earlier than that so I can actually sit down at the table and have breakfast with her before she goes to school. Because that is important to me, right? If that's not important to me, it doesn't happen all the time either, by the way. But it's, she doesn't have to wake up extra early to spend time with mommy, but it's important to me. So I make sure that I'm making that extra effort. And
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I just want to sleep in that hour and a half, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's that commitment to yourself, right? And commitment to the things that are important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, AJ, I'm not sure, did I answer your question around, so you asked me if it was a conscious decision to live this way and how I overcame the mindset. Did I answer those two questions for you?
I think so. I think maybe for those of us who are listening, like what are just some simple 2 or 3 really simple things that people can start implementing today, or people can start thinking about even today, if this is something that they're interested in doing. And I mean, quote unquote, this being kind of living in a way that goes kind of against the norm, because that's really what this is, right? Like, I think you and I are doing our own little experiment around how is this going to play out for us to live in a way where our life is not dictated by a 9 to 5.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my experiment right now, but you're right. I am doing other experiments around how can I continue this life of ease in an even bigger way in terms of other aspects of my life. But yeah, good question. So there's 2 really easy things that I think are 2 simple things that anyone can do right away, which I think is actually probably difficult for many people. One is turn off, try to say this without cursing. Turn off the notifications on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Silence them, whatever. And to choose to respond rather than react.
Yes.
That's the first way to start moving into this life of ease. Because most people have their notifications on and something comes in, whether it's a work, so we've been talking about work today, so a work email, but it could be a text from a friend, whatever, or even like a news notification. Lord Almighty, if you're getting notifications about the news, just turn those off, like just permanently. Like don't even, why? Just don't. That's a whole nother soapbox. But most people will get an email or a text message or whatever, and they'll respond right away.
Yeah.
And that's taking you out of the presence that you have with whatever else that you're doing, whether it's spending time with your kids or spending time with yourself or working, and then now you're in the middle of a work task and now you're responding to an email and you're completely distracted. Just turn off the notifications and then, every hour or however often feels comfortable for you, depending on where you are, set a time period to respond to your notifications. And then the second one is the one that we've been talking about, during this whole conversation, which is schedule yourself. So if you have a really full, I'm smiling because AJ and I talked about personally replacing the word busy with full. I no longer use the word busy because it's such a badge of honor. If you have a very full schedule and you feel like your schedule is dictated by other people a lot, that's another conversation where maybe it's not as dictated as you may feel it is. But if that's where you're at, just schedule whatever you can. Schedule that 3 times a week workout, or schedule that 15 minutes of breathing, 15 minutes of journaling, 15 minutes of drinking your coffee and doing nothing else. Schedule that. And if you're someone who's already accustomed to that, maybe you're further along on the spectrum, then challenge yourself to see like how much ease can I build into my life. Schedule. I take the entire, well, actually, no, I hasn't taken the entire month of December off yet, but I take off a big chunk in December because I'm not high energy during that time of the year typically. So if you're someone that feels like you've kind of got this process down, challenge yourself to even more ease by scheduling your time off and your vacation. Schedule more time off, either in your year or even in your day, and
Hmm.
just see how much you can lengthen the amount of enjoyment and
Hmm.
pleasure that you have in your day. And if you're brand new to this, then just start with, like I said, schedule 15 minutes a day, schedule 3 hours a week for yourself, and don't cancel on yourself. Thank you for joining me on Veronica's Voice. If you took something away from today's episode, remember to like, share, and subscribe so others can benefit as well. See you next time.